Bunge la Seneti linaendelea na warsha ya kuwafahamisha maseneta kuhusu shughuli za bunge hilo kwa siku ya 4 katika hoteli moja mjini Naivasha katika kaunti ya Nakuru. Ajenda ya leo inahusu mchakato wa kuunda bajeti ya taifa na sera za mataifa nchi za nje. Mawaziri Ukur Yatani na wa hazina ya kitaifa na Rachel Omamo wa masuala nje ya nchi wanatarajiwa kuhutubu katika kongamano hilo hii leo. Seth Olale anaungana nasi moja kwa moja atupashe zaidi. Seth, kazi kwako.
Best of my knowledge, in the 5 years I was in Senate, they have never really taken any of the recommendations or resolutions passed by the Senate which should be put into those papers before they are finalized. And the reason why those documents are important, members, is that those are the documents which inform the preparation of the estimates, the annual estimates, which are given to the National Assembly. So, for example, it gives an indication of how much money will go to the counties in the DORA, in the Division of Revenue Bill. So those documents that he mentioned are very important, but it is critical that his office, Treasury, takes on board the comments by the senators. Now, there are key issues, budget issues, that I think we need to look at, areas of concern. If you're looking at any budgets, including this budget for the national government, the most important, of course, is any budget must be balanced. The amount of money you raise must be the amount of money you spend. Whether it's the county governments, unfortunately, what is happening in most of our budgets for the national government in recent years, it's not revenue equals to expenditure. It starts with expenditure equals to revenue plus loans. This is why when you have a budget like the one of last year or the current year, 3.3 trillion, then you find the revenue is 2 trillion, and the difference 1 point something obviously becomes then the loan. And this then puts us into a situation where you spend money and you end up in the financial situation that we are. I agree with the CS that we don't have 93 million shillings in the account, but I don't agree with him that the country is not broke. When you are borrowing or living beyond your means, in English language, it means you are insolvent. But as a nation, they collect money, and if they don't have it, they borrow. So that probably. So the second point, apart from being balanced, is transparency. One of the challenges we have had in this country about budgets for a long time is transparency. If you remember Golden Bag, that money was in the budget, but because of the way the budget transparency, opaqueness of the budget, it could not be detected. If you remember Anglo leasing in 2004, those 18 projects of security in which 55 billion shillings was lost was in the budget, but we could not see it because of the way it's. So the budget transparency is very important, and is a matter that I think we should always focus on, because items should be itemized and very clear, very open, so that, and that is what the principles of Public Finance Management Act provides. That openness and transparency is critical. The other one is the implementation. I think the Controller of Budget does always submit to the members, both houses, their reports on how the budget is being implemented, and that is where you see all the irregularities or people who have not complied. And by the way, if you look at that, it will give you an indication, an early warning sign, if there is a pending bill accumulation going on. Because when people draw money, and instead of spending on the budget for which it has been drawn, they divert it to something else, then the consequences will be a pending bill, particularly rampant in the county governments. And it happens also, of course, in the national government. And this is an area that I think when you meet with the control of budget, probably they need to be empowered more so that they can deal with that matter. Public participation has become a PR, but it's an important area in budgeting. Including our own views are not being taken on, as institutions of parliament. Integrity. I want to tell you, when I was in Senate, I think Bonnie was there, Churiot was there, Fatuma. You remember in 2015, Treasury, which always works in coalition with the National Assembly, they provided a bribe. And I want to use that because it was a headline story in the local media at the time, and I've put the copies of that in the slides. The Parliamentary Committee for Budget and Appropriations, you remember, were given 3 billion shillings so that they can approve some things. And that money was supposed to be then given, allocated to them. It's allocated as a public hearing expense, but you remember it was supposed to be. We spent a whole afternoon in Senate discussing How could National Assembly accept to be bribed so that they can do that? And how could Treasury do that kind of thing? Of course, then the House discovered what happened, and the amounts were rejected by the House National Assembly, and the money was transferred to other. And you'll find some of it in the papers, in the clips of the newspapers that I have attached. But that shows you the degree to which sometimes Treasury or government, executive, will go to try and influence legislature in the same way that the county governors would try and influence the county assembly so that they can get some of the items included. So let me jump onto the budget oversight. This again is a critical area, but I would just want to focus on one. Compliance with the principles of public finance management. One of those principles, which is very important, is to ensure, I think for all of us, particularly those of you who come from areas that you believe are probably marginalized, it requires that there is equitable development of the country. In other words, when national government is allocating resources, it must be done equitably. Quite often when you see the president talking, particularly the former president or the immediate former president, he has always talked about CDF, county money, and other monies, but he would never talk about equitable allocation of the national government budget. But the Public Finance Management Act, the principles for Public Finance Management Act, which is provided for that law and in the Constitution, is clear that there has to be equitable allocation of resources. And that is one of the things that we need to audit as senators, because it impacts on how much money goes to the counties, for example. When money is being prepared in the Division of Revenue bill, Treasury always itemizes reasons why they should not give you more money. If you look at the memorandum in the Division of Revenue bill, they tell you there's national interest. You know, we have to look at. There's public debt. There's this and that. They remove all those things and they tell you, we have just so much. So we cannot allocate more than this amount to the county governments. But some of those things that you call national interest, to me, or to a child who is starving in Turkana, if you tell them you want to put up 1 million acres in Galana Kulad irrigation and you want to send 20 billion there, I mean, to the child in Turkana, it doesn't matter. He wants his bread and butter in Turkana. And then you wait and you realize that, in fact, in the Constitution, agriculture has been developed. Why don't you give that money to the county in Turkana? Why don't you give that money to the county in Isiolo? Let them do their own agriculture. Or you say, we want to buy laptops. You remember, we started off with 17 billion on the laptops project. And for me, I say, look, forget about laptops. I have no classrooms. Those are my priorities in my county. But Treasury tells you it's national interest. So I think some of those things, which you find always in the memorandum in the Division of Revenue bill, are the ones that are used to try and limit how much money is available to the counties, and which is critical for you as the senators. Now, I want to talk about very quickly, my time is running, but the items which I've been asked to mention, I won't go to the rest, but just 3 items. One, the CS talked about Equalization Fund. And I want to tell you this. When we were in Bomas, and I was chairing the technical working group on public finance, the chapters that, the public finance chapter, I created this item called Equalization Fund. When I came up with that, the idea was within 20 years, we'll be allocating sufficient resources so that those areas of the country that have been left behind would catch up. And after 20 years, we are done with that. But at the time when we were in Bomas, if you look at the Bomas draft, we had about 5%. We are talking about sufficient amount of resources. But later, of course, the amount was zero down to 0.5. And let me tell you, that money today, it's much ado about nothing, Equalization Fund. Because you're talking about 3 billion, 4 billion, over 15 counties, 20 counties, you're talking of 200 million, and the fuss around it has been so much. When Treasury wants to give it to National Assembly, and National Assembly enjoys that, that cordial relation. So I think, in my view, really, next time the Constitution comes around, you probably don't need equalization, because the amount does not serve the original purpose for which it was created. Now, the counties, National Treasury has always used an excuse that county governments are holding huge amounts of money. So that's why we are not disbursing. But let me tell you, the Constitution is very clear. The Constitution wants Treasury to disburse that money without delay. Without delay means as per the schedule that has been approved by the Senate. That schedule, which has been passed by the resolution of the Senate, is shared with Treasury so that they can comply with it. So it's not about how much money the Treasury hold, the counties hold. And by the way, the counties can hold money for a variety of reasons. One of the simple ones is there's a procurement process. I have procured the services of a contractor to build a road. That road will take 2-3 months. That money has to be held until that service is complete. And then I make the payment. So there's a process. So that money must be released. And it has nothing to do with how much money really those counties, most of the time it's not about the inability to use the money, but it's the process of procurements that take quite a bit of time for counties. In the same way that national government, when you look at the amount of money that is given to development in national government, and you look at the absorption rate at the end of the year, there's no time that Treasury, and is here the CS, there's no time in the history of Treasury that it has absorbed more than 60% of its entire development budget at any one.
Naam, ni Bilokero huyo aliyekuwa kuwa mbunge katika eneo bunge la Mandera ya Kati ama ukipenda Mandera Central, na vile vile seneta wa kwanza katika kaunti ya Mandera, akiweza kuzungumza na baadhi ya maseneta ambao wanahudhuria kongamano ambalo limeingia